Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Happy New Year's, guys. It's 2020 now, and I wanted to do an episode on picking your word for the year because, as you know, resolutions don't always work out the way we plan, and often they set us up for failure because there is a lack of details in it, and there's too much restriction, or they seem very big, broad, and just random and unplanned. I don't know. Resolutions just don't sit well with me, and I feel like you guys can agree that they usually are non-existent by the second month of the year. So today I wanted to talk about what has worked for me, and besides the goal setting that I do with my husband, which I feel like is a different category of goal setting than a resolution. They just work out better. But besides us doing that together as a couple, I also like to have a word for the year for myself. And then as a family, we pick a word. So I want to share with you guys how I do that and something to think about, and maybe why you should pick a word for yourself this year too. So just as a fair warning, I have my almost 4-month-old in my lap as I'm going to be recording this. He is teething right now, which holy cow, he is the only kiddo that is teethed this early, but he is very nasally and congested and drooly. And so if you hear something that sounds similar to like a dog grunting, that would be my child actually in my lap as we are recording. So just wanted to give you a heads up. That is my life right now. He does not want to be put down because, he's uncomfortable. So let's get to planning your word for the year. So the first thing that I do before I even think about words and look at word lists, which I'm going to tell you that I try to avoid those because they just make it very overwhelming. So the first thing that I do is to reflect on this past year. So right now, as you're driving, as you're sitting, as you're listening, wherever you are, first thing I want you guys to ask yourself is, what could you use more of in your life? And literally the first thing or the first few things that pops into your head, I want you to take note of them or write them down because obviously there's something there and maybe we need to pay attention to that. The second question that I would ask yourself is, what can you use less of in your life? So, for example, say that I ask myself, what could I use more of in my life? And it's community. And then I think of, what can I use less of in my life? And it's loneliness, being isolated, feeling like I have no friends or nothing to do. Then my word, or the things that I want to think about, is going to lean more towards, what can I do to cultivate that this next year? And I think that this is where resolutions trip us up, because you start to say oh, I'm going to have more get-togethers, or I'm going to have more, this or that, or I'm going to do this or that. And that's great and all. But I just feel like there's something about it that we fall off because there's no freedom. It feels so restricted, and there's no guidance, there's no steps. And really with a word of the year, there's really no guidance or steps either. But I feel like because it's a theme for the year, it makes those resolutions or the things that we want to achieve fall into place because we're focusing on this one thing, and we can constantly ask ourselves, does that help us achieve that or does it not? So if my word for the year is community, in all things that I do, I'm going to ask myself, is this cultivating community? Yes or no? And then my actions are going to follow based off of what I want to do. If I want more community, I'm going to want to choose the things that sit when I ask myself, does this cultivate more community? Yes. Then I'm going to do more of those things. If I ask myself, does it cultivate community? And it doesn't, then maybe I'm going to do something that does instead. Does that make sense? So throughout the year, say your word is brave. Well, in everything that you do, you can simply ask yourself, does this build upon my braveness? Yes or no? If it doesn't, you're going to move on and do something else. If it does, then you should continue to do that thing, and it's going to help you to grow in that area that you wanted to grow in. And all these things fall into place, right? Do you see that? Do you see how this is working out? Let's say your word for the year is connection. And maybe it's you really want to focus on connection specifically within your family. So whenever you do something, and whenever you get on your phone and you catch yourself, you're not always going to do it, but then when you do notice, then you're going to ask yourself, is this creating connection within my family? If it's not, you can stop, put your phone down, and do something that does. Like, it makes you more aware versus, if you sit down and you say, like, no, this isn't, or yes, this is creating connection within my family, then you're going to do it more. You're going to continue what you're doing, and it's going to naturally build that connection with your family because that's what you're doing, right? So that's why I really love choosing to have a word for the year versus a resolution, because I feel like it's easy to focus on this one word throughout the year. Which brings me to the next thing that I want you guys to consider as you're thinking about your words, you're narrowing your words down. Some years for me, I know the word right away. Bless you, little guy. I know the word right away, and so I only have one word. Some years it's harder for me, and I will have to brainstorm, and it'll be like 3 words, and then I'll really think about them and start to narrow them down because I also want to choose a word that won't irritate me throughout the year. So think about the word that you don't mind focusing on for the whole year. If it's a word that, like, it's crazy to think about, but words do irritate you, right? Like, there are some things that you might just love, especially if it's a slang word or something like that. There's a word that you might like right now, but then having to constantly think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, this word is so irritating. So make sure it's a word that you don't mind focusing on, or that you won't mind focusing on throughout the whole year. Also, that'll be something easy for you to remember. Like, if you're pulling out the dictionary and you're picking like some ambiguous, right, like word, then you're going to forget it and you're not going to use it, or it's not going to be realistic because you're not going to be able to relate to it. So don't get all fancy with your word because it looks really awesome in your journal, in calligraphy, writing, or ink, or on your vision board because it's all pretty and doodly. Pick a word that's realistic that you're going to use and think of every day that can remind you to keep striving towards that goal that you want to strive for the year. So here's the cool thing about using a word for the year versus a resolution is that you will gradually work on things as they naturally come into your life, versus if you have a list of to-dos, you're constantly looking at them and thinking about them, about all the things that you should be doing right now. Like, it looks like this long list of things that you should be achieving at all times. And that's why I think we often fail at those, because it's so much to do all at once, versus if you have a word, then it naturally just falls into your life as you're doing things, and you can readjust and pivot to make it to where you're achieving those goals. I didn't know what I was saying just then. But yeah, so you can think about your word, right? So if it's that you want to have better health, better wellness, I think get narrow. And if if you are thinking about a health or wellness area word, I think to pick something very narrow. So like, nutritious, like you want to have a more nutritious year, or mentally well year, or physically well year. I don't know what some words would be for that, but like when you're doing things naturally, if you're going to ask yourself, is this going to bring my body more healing? If that's a word for you, yes or no. And then obviously if you're in the In-N-Out line and you ask yourself, is this going to bring myself more healing in the long run, or is this just a quick fix because I'm hungry? No. Then you can move on and make the right decisions. And I feel like that is going to bring you more success. P.S. I love me some In-N-Out, so no judgment there. I'm just trying to give you guys some ideas of how I process this in my brain and how I use this word for the year. And fair warning, with all things that help us to grow, change, evolve for the better, there's going to be challenges. And I guarantee you, with any word you pick, there's going to be challenges, because it's going to make us feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to make us feel vulnerable. It's going to challenge us, especially if it's like opening your home up, so like community. And that's something that doesn't come naturally to you, or that's something that makes you anxious. I guarantee you're going to have these feelings that are kind of icky, or maybe that are going to stretch you and make you nervous. And it's going to be awkward and hard and odd at some times. But when you come out from the other side, I guarantee you're going to feel so much better. And as we all know, growth never comes from being comfortable or when we're comfortable. Growth always happens when we're being stretched and pulled and made uncomfortable, unfortunately. So I hope that gives you some perspective and some insight and some good help with picking your word and some encouragement this year. And maybe, hopefully, this will provide a new successful year of you achieving the thing that you most want to prioritize this year. And also, the fun thing you can do with this is to create a word as a family. Last year, we got together as a family, all 4 of us, and talked about what we wanted to achieve, in the new year. And so last year our word was celebrate. So just as you would put your actions through that filter of the word for yourself personally. So if your personal word was celebrate, you would ask yourselves questions if what you're doing brings you closer to your goal of celebrating or showing celebration for something, or however you want to translate that word for yourself. We would do the same thing as a family, and I would think about that as a family of is what I'm choosing for our family today bringing us closer to that goal of us wanting to bring more celebration into our life? And if the answer is yes, then I continue to plan more things like that, or do more things like that, or continue with my plan of doing whatever it is we're doing. Or if the answer is no, then I have to reevaluate, maybe I was just doing that for myself and it's really not for my family. So maybe I need to think about doing something else or doing less of something, So I think that is really cool for you guys to come up with a word of the year as a family. And then as a family, maybe you could possibly do some sort of craft that will make the kids feel more included in the choosing of this word, or, more invested in it like you are. And something that I like to do is to get a poster board or a piece of construction paper, and then we write the word big, in the middle of the paper, and then we can decorate it however we want to, or write things that we think represent celebration, or, quotes or pictures or doodles, and just color it together and have fun with it, and then hang it up in a place where we can all see it so we can be reminded of it all year long. The same thing you can do for your word for yourself. If you want to take it and write it on a Post-it note, stick it in your car, stick it in your closet, wherever you're going to see it most often, your bathroom mirror. Or you can even, get together with a group of friends and decide what your word for the year is going to be, and get a piece of white computer paper, write it big in the middle, and then write quotes and things that are going to help, encourage you in that process throughout the year. And then you can frame it and hang it and make it look cute, put it on your bedside table. Just put it where you can see it to remind you of what you are striving towards throughout this new year. So that is my suggestion in regards to not maybe doing a resolution this year, but choosing a word for the year. And I hope this is helpful for you. I hope that this will provide you a year with more fulfillment and more growth, as uncomfortable as that may be at times. And I hope that you guys really, really have an amazing new year. I am so grateful to have been podcasting another year with you guys, and to have you guys listening and watching the podcast grow, and you sharing it with other moms and other women who might benefit from these episodes. Because again, at the end of the day, this is not about me. I love, for one, getting to talk to all these amazing women who have these insights to things that I don't have, or the tips to things that I don't have or know how to handle as best as they do. And I think that, one, I'm not only learning, but I'm getting to grow with you guys and share these women's knowledge with you guys, and hopefully help you in whatever it is you're doing. I know that I need help all the time. So I hope that you feel like this is a place where you can come to find community, find help, find encouragement, empowerment, whatever it is that you need. I hope that you can find it here. And I'm so grateful for you. And I hope that you have an amazing new year in 2020.